here for, and here we are. I'd like to welcome our TMP resellers and our customers to this afternoon's webinar on TMP tips from the forestry, survey, and construction markets. One of the things here that you'll notice is that we took time to take a look at some of our vertical markets and talk to our customers and our resellers on what they're using TerrainNavigater Pro for and how they are using it. So I think today's presentation is going to be very beneficial. So as I mentioned, we're taking a departure in our training series to share reseller and customer experiences that they've had with TerrainNavigater Pro. In the past, we've focused on training customers with the tools, the features, and the preferences in TerrainNavigater Pro. So today we're going to share TMP stories. We are also going to share TMP experiences from different segments, from different walks of life, and everything from the forestry market to the surveying field, the oil and gas surveying, which is a subset of surveying, and also in our construction markets. So these are just a few of the markets that TerrainNavigater Pro serves. Others include geology, environmental engineering, engineering of other types as well, archaeology, and others. And we hope to have future webinars that explore those additional markets. So some goals for today's webinar is to share reseller and customer experiences with TerrainNavigater Pro. And the idea here is that so other customers and potential new customers can be exposed to new ideas on how TerrainNavigator Pro can be used to save time and money. A second goal for today's webinar is to draw together the TerrainNavigator Pro community with shared experiences and stories, and thereby create, a bond within the TMP community. A third goal for today's webinar is to expand the TMP knowledge base. So that's basically some of the goals for today's webinar. The interesting thing about the markets that we serve, and today we're focusing again on forestry, surveying, and construction, these particular positions require formal education and experience. And, in some cases, 4 years of training and so forth. And so this presentation was created and developed with the strong support of resellers and customers who took the time to educate me on their industries. I do have a 4-year bachelor's degree, but I don't have a degree, let's say, in forestry or construction or in surveying. So I do owe a debt of gratitude for those customers that we're including in this afternoon's webinar. Through the conversations with them and email, I was able to, learn the proper terminology, and they explained to me in detail how TMP uses in their everyday work. So I am deeply indebted to the following TMP customers who brought me up to speed on their industry. This presentation is as much theirs as it is mine, and I'm very honored to share their TMP stories. And so I would like to thank Chip Bessie, he's a forester in Maine, Reggie Ebarb, who works with Universal Pegasus International, who really took the time to bring me up to speed in a specific subset, which was the oil and gas surveying industry. I'd also like to thank Chris King from MapTech Incorporated, just to just eliminate any confusion. TerrainNavigator Pro used to be under MapTech, which was a different company. So it's not the same as Chris's company. Chris is located down in the south, and MapTech that TerrainNavigator Pro used to be under was up in New England. So just to dispel any notions that there was any It's just two separate companies. I'd also like to thank Robert Mazur from Mazur Forestry, Roger Stromberg from Roger Stromberg Forestry and Land Conservation Consultants for services. So again, without these customers, this presentation would not exist. I also owe a debt of gratitude to our business partners, our resellers that have been on the front lines in advocating for TerrainNavigater Pro to their customers. These resellers include Johnny Thompson, John Lunsford with Cathanol, and Johnny, oh, by the way, is with Landmark Spatial Solutions, and Silas Dupuy from SciTech, Louisiana. So thank you to resellers and to customers for helping us get this webinar put together. So today we're going to focus, and we're going to start with forestry. So the forestry segment and Landmark Spatial Solutions, I'd like to talk a little bit about them. They have, let's go ahead and get all of our information up here. They're a forest technology company, 18 years as solutions integrator for this industry. They provide sales, training, support, GIS consulting, as well as GPS, GIS, forest measurement, forest inventory. They work with drones and getting that technology out to their customers, as well as load ticketing, reporting. Landmark Spatial Solutions has 2 locations, one in Starkville, Mississippi, and one in Robbins, Georgia. And one of the things that they have worked with is 20,000 companies and agencies within 36 states and provinces. So they're very widely known and used. So let's get into a little bit of TerrainNavigater Pro and how Landmark Spatial Solutions sees TerrainNavigater Pro in terms of forestry workflow. So basically, the idea here is a new project is created within TerrainNavigater Pro. They will search for a property, delineate a track, digitize the stands, export those stands, generate plots from those stands, and then navigate to and enter forest data, inventory data in a particular product called T-Cruise, and then compile the results for analysis. When I spoke to Johnny in getting the webinar together, TMP is used in different areas in forestry. For example, location, to verify location on the ground relative to property boundaries. They use the parcel data subscription to determine who owns adjacent lands. Also in other areas as well, locate access routes, place markers to identify those boundaries, determine where roads can be used. Now, here's a screenshot where in TerrainNavigater Pro, you can, and I think our customers are aware of this particular feature, but the parcel data subscription allows you to convert a parcel boundary to a track, or you can use the draw polygon tool. And once you've done that, you can then, you've got your boundaries, you can then use the polygon tool to digitize the stands. One of the important features in TerrainNavigater Pro is the ability to see that stand, let's say on a mobile device using TMP Mobile. And if you want to do that, you would want to convert the polygon to a track if you want to see it out in the field. Then the next step in the forestry workflow is exporting digitized stands. And you can do that by going to the file menu, going to export in polygons. Those are typically exported as shape files. And just a note that the stands are in latitude, longitude. So exporting digitized stands is key. We are working, Landmark Spatial Solutions and Triple Forestry have been working this last year on developing a forestry specific module into TMP, and that with the goal of enhancing workflow. So there would be improved digitizing, plot allocation, inventory template design, make it smoother and easier, and working to take that information and synchronize it with the mobile app, do plot navigation and tree tallies. So one of the ideas currently, there is a product called T-Cruise, which is by Trimble, and working to process the data in T-Cruise or other forest inventory programs. So just want to wet your whistle that TMP is coming out with a forestry module. I don't have a price point yet or a when that will be released, but just want to wet your whistle with it that will be coming out. So one of the things that we asked our customers about, what is it about TerrainNavigator Pro that has been beneficial. And so here we have a quote from one of Johnny's customers, Vic Blanchard, and I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but what's in red I think is important. We utilize the maps, and I quote, "We utilize the maps and photos generated by TMP as an appendix to every timber sale document we execute." So, it's being used every day, and TMP is a huge time saver and helps us to more efficiently manage our timber stands. So TMP is definitely in the forestry industry being used every single day. Couple more TMP quotes. Another one of Johnny's customers, Rux Boyd, from Union Level Land and Timber. He says, "It saves our company a tremendous amount of time and legwork when synced with our handheld GPS units." And also Glenn Miller from Glenn Miller Forestry Services, saying that it's a great program. So we appreciate our business relationship with Landmark Spatial Solutions and look forward to innovative ways of continuing to bring TerrainNavigator Pro to the forestry market. Next up in our reseller category is John Lunsford with Catanal. One of the things is Catanal just this last year signed on to become a TMP reseller. Their job is to provide innovation for forest products industry, and their purpose is to provide tools to improve the lives of those that surround them. It's very interesting. John's on the cutting edge of bringing tools and technology to his industry. And during his career, he has worked in various forest management roles, including roles such as herbicide sales and distribution. And in September of this year, John wrote an article that included a mention and his experience with TerrainNavigator Pro, and that was in September of 2019. Definitely recommend, if you have time, to check out his website, check out his blog. He's really on the cutting edge of, technology in the forestry industry is just moving at a fast and furious pace, and he's doing a great job staying up to date on those advancements. His specific interest is in promoting widespread use of data analytics and technology in the profession. So John's customers use TerrainNavigator Pro to verify location on the ground relative to property boundaries, determine ownership of adjacent lands, set markers to identify boundaries, log sets, etc., determine where unimproved trails or temporary roads are located. Perhaps they're obscured by tree canopy, or perhaps they're not identified on the satellite or aerial photos. And he uses the customers use TMP to identify and georeference those hidden roads using both the TMP Cloud and the mobile app in the field. And he also, their customers also use TMP to locate alternate access routes into remote areas, again, where roads are non-existent, and to assist loggers or contractors across creeks. And what you'll see here is some screenshots of TerrainNavigater Pro showing those specific like roads that might be hidden. You'll see in the left-hand side, for example, that TMP Mobile screenshot does have the land ownership that's represented by those orange dots. So he's easily in the field able to go out and, you know, if they don't know the landowner's name, click on that orange dot and get that information. He syncs that up with the TMP desktop, again, for a complete picture. So a fantastic use for TerrainNavigater Pro. This next slide has some information that was provided in John's article on TerrainNavigater Pro. And I think, you know, the big win situation here is the last quote, which is, for under $500 per year, TMP offers a rich set of features and tools for creating maps and working with GIS data. So welcome aboard to John and to Katana as they continue to explore innovative technology and bring that to the forestry industry. Now, after those are some of the comments from our and use case scenarios from our resellers, we're going to talk about a couple of customers that are independent consulting foresters using TerrainNavigater Pro. First on the docket is Chip Bessie, who is a Maine licensed forester, and you can see his credentials here. His special focus is on timber harvest planning and supervision, as well as third-party certification of family forests through American Tree Farm System. So Chip has an interesting use case for TerrainNavigater Pro. He has been using it for 3 years. And basically, he's using TerrainNavigater Pro to help manage timberland that has been in his family for 5 generations. Some of his uses for TerrainNavigater Pro, again, like we've mentioned previously in forestry, layout location for future roads, trails, and boundary lines, record a position on a tract of land using the TMP tracking on the mobile app, taking pictures of the forest before it's cut, immediately after harvest and at intervals thereafter to check on the progress of how they're regenerating. He also imports custom historical state and federal maps to see what tracts of land were open 80 years ago. He makes notes and records legal issues, such as access disputes with adjacent landowners or trespasses that might occur. He does document herbicide spray sites, and he shows the location of a road to display access and gate location, which might be restricted from public. And he also uses TMP to outline future timber crews. And he also uses it, the profile tool, to show where the slopes or the grade might be steep and to be avoided. Here's some TMP maps that Chip has produced. You'll see on the left-hand side desktop TMP showing acreage that has been sprayed with herbicides. On the right-hand side, you'll see TerrainNavigater Pro mobile app showing the display of the gate that to access roads and things like that. I love what Chip says here in this next slide. The previous software he was using was no longer supported, so he was looking for an alternative. That's how he came to TerrainNavigater Pro. It was recommended by a fellow forester. You know, one of the strengths with TerrainNavigater Pro is word of mouth. And so we do have a number of customers that are pretty happy with TerrainNavigater Pro, and they kind of spread the word to their networks. Two quick highlights for Chip. Product support is excellent, and also, the software is deeply developed, and I quote, "Far beyond what I would ever need in my corner of forestry, but whenever I discover a need for new capability, TMP has already created it." So, we appreciate Chip and the work that he's doing with TerrainNavigater Pro. Next up is Robert Mazur, North Carolina licensed forester number 273. So excited working with Bob. He really brought me up to speed in some technical detail how he's been using TerrainNavigater Pro. So he has a forestry degree from Penn State, 45 years in commercial forestry. He entered the field in 1979, and Bob has a specific focus in forestry, working with private landowners. Some of the types of works that he performs are timber appraisals, timber sales, timber management, and special projects. And he's a longtime user for TerrainNavigater Pro, 20 plus years. I believe in conversations that I've had with Bob, he was telling me that he was one of the early adopters back in the 90s when he was, there was a number of crew that were required in the field. And it's interesting to get his perspective on the forestry industry and TMP down through the years. He says that TMP and the parcel data subscription and GPS drastically reduce the amount of time in the field, and that's a powerful time-saving tool. His specific niche is he's hired by timber buyers to locate irons used as survey corners. And this is a direct quote from Bob. Using TMP has saved his clients hundreds of thousands of dollars and maybe even close to $1 million in land surveys. I just wanted to share, because Bob had gone into depth with a couple of different things. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about that whole idea of using TerrainNavigater Pro to locate irons. He said, "There's no way of knowing," and I quote, "there's no way of knowing how many irons I have saved and cataloged, but it has to be in the tens of thousands. I've had more than one surveyor asked to purchase my marker list when I fully retire. It seems intuitive that a user of TMP would save all the boundary corners markers that were ever found, but it's surprising how something this basic doesn't occur to the average TMP user unless it's mentioned by someone that has saved that information." So through his 20 plus years, he has saved the position of each and every one of those survey irons. And I want to focus on a specific use case. There was and the names have been changed, but there was a specific situation that came up in Bob's line of work, where, and again, the names have been changed. We're going to call it the City of Bellevue, and how TerrainNavigater Pro was used in this very unique situation. It's a little bit lengthy, but I think it's worth it. And again, this is directly from Bob. The City of Bellevue, about 30 years ago, took bottomland areas from private landowners by eminent domain to protect an endangered stream mussel. This was a trade-off to the federal government for doubling the size of the city's reservoir, most of which was inhabited by the mussel. The city did a land survey of the areas that they took, and it generally followed a contour line so many feet up a hill from the stream. At the time the land was taken by eminent domain, about 35 years ago, both the area the city was taking from each landowner and most all circumstances, the landowners were also cut their remaining adjoining woodland. And it came that the surveyors on new cut over woods. There was nothing left standing at all. Every twig, every limb, every leaf, etc., went into the chippers, and that chip wood was sent to the mills. Being on a contour, there was no turn in the boundary lines about every 50 to 200 or so feet. There are no post signs, iron corners, concrete markers, or other distinguishing indications where the boundary line was at above ground. The city surveyor used a 3/8 iron rebar about 14 inches long for property corners. And so these iron corners would not be accidentally knocked out of place years down the road. They were all buried about 3 to 4 inches below the ground. The city was adamant that it was the responsibility of the landowner to know and to mark where the boundary lines were at. 35 years after the rebar was put into the ground, and they were not about to foot the price of a surveyor now, 35 years later, to mark the lines above ground. The cost of hiring a surveyor to come in and locate each of these irons on my client's properties was quoted at roughly $11,000 for about plus or minus 45 acres. The city would also not supply any of the survey maps they had drawn 35 years ago without paying a fee of $1,500 per map, and 3 of those were needed. Bob was able to locate worded deed descriptions that listed each bearing a distance, and using TerrainNavigater Pro, he was able to accomplish the finding of all lines for about $3,000. So pretty fantastic use case scenario that Bob had for TerrainNavigater Pro. Here is a slide that Bob presented, which he uses the TerrainNavigater Pro range bearing tool to confirm, to locate, and mark the boundary corners. One of the things that you do is you can take those with the range bearing tool, you can take legal descriptions, then make range bearing between them, and then go out into the field and locate the irons. I'd like to just note that you can also do that with the route or the polygon tool for the same purposes. So fantastic use case, again, for TerrainNavigater Pro. Here's a forest management map that Bob created in TerrainNavigater Pro, and also a timber cruise map that he created with TMP. So some fantastic everyday examples of maps generated by TMP, saving people time and money. And we have a quote from Bob. Quote, and I can now state that the majority of foresters and timber buyers are using TMP. Some start with ArcGIS, but they quickly pull back to TMP. ArcGIS is fine for certain uses, but forestry work, TMP has a much shorter learning curve, and to me seems better suited to forestry work. And our next customer using TerrainNavigater Pro in forestry is Roger Stromberg. He's a registered California Society of American Forester number 2620, has 35 years in the field, and also performs timber appraisals, timber sales, timber management, and conservation of working forest lands. He uses TMP to create maps for inclusion in forest lands appraisal. One of the things that he particularly likes is the outdoor terrain map for its contours. And here we see a map generated by Roger, TMP forest land appraisal map. And his quote, and just want to focus in on the last statement there, I believe that map scenarios that have generated in TMP have helped me to obtain clients. So, so some different, from resellers to individual consulting foresters using TerrainNavigater Pro in their experiences. We're going to now turn towards using TerrainNavigater Pro in surveying. And I'd like to thank Chris King from MapTech. He graduated in 1974 with ICS courses in surveying, has 45 years of experience in the field, 40 with MapTech, and 21 years he served as president of the company. In surveying, his experience, his company, what they do is perform detailed GPS and conventional GPS topographic surveying mapping, subsurface utility engineering that includes locating underground utilities, boundary surveying of private and public lands, photogrammic control surveys, right-of-way and pipeline surveys, legal descriptions and plats, flood studies. Some of his clients include USACE districts, the Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama Department of Transportation, and the Federal Highway Administration. Again, Chris is a longtime TMP user with 20 years, and he uses TMP to estimate cost when quick turnaround is needed or it's not economical to travel to the site. He determines the type of infrastructure that might be available at the site. That infrastructure can include roads, access points, etc. He exports parcel data to AutoCAD. He creates maps that are used in project proposals, and he shares the information in TMP with his colleagues. One of the things that he uses, or a quote that he uses, TMP is used extensively in the preparation of estimates, especially when they're too far for site inspection. The ability to switch back and forth between the quadrangle and meaning the USGS topos and the satellite is invaluable, especially combined with the parcel data. Then, of course, is the ability to transfer that information to CAD and Google Earth, makes the information provided in the field to the field crews much better than any way that we have discovered. And here you'll see a couple of maps that he generated in TerrainNavigater Pro. Each of these TMP maps were prepared prior to sending the survey teams to the project sites to perform those boundary surveys. They were prepared so that the crews would have a better idea of where to look for property corners, etc. They were also used in the negotiation of fees to perform the boundary surveys, giving better evidence of the true amount of work the field crew would have to perform. So great desktop slides from Chris. And he says, I would highly recommend anyone in the surveying business utilize all the features that comes with TerrainNavigater Pro. It enables project planning better than any other product we've discovered. We firmly believe it saves us money on every project that we perform. As a subset to surveying, there was a specific customer I've been working with in the oil and gas surveying market, and that is a very specialized niche. And I'm grateful for Reggie Ebarb. Reggie is with Universal Pegasus International, has a Bachelor of Science in Applied Science and Computer Technology from Texas A&M. He has also attended survey school with the U.S. Army and has done experience with that. 32 years in the field. And one of the things that I thought was important on concentrating on this particular niche market that he uses TerrainNavigater Pro during the planning stage in the field for specific types of surveys, for boundary surveys, well location surveys, pipeline surveys, oil and gas surveys. And again, Reggie is an early adopter of TerrainNavigater Pro, has been a longtime user, 20 years. And, specifically, using TerrainNavigater Pro during the planning stage for those well location surveys and during the field. And he pointed out that TerrainNavigater Pro has the following cost savings. The pre-planning helps determine the personal protective equipment, the PPE and tools that the crew is going to need for the project environment. Also, he's able to get predicted mileage to get to and from the project. Has an accurate account for wooded areas, water bodies, streams, rivers, railroads, highways, for progress footages based on crew rates, so they can use that in their analysis in pre-planning. And I love this quote. He works with clients, and it saves the client mega dollars because the pre-planning helps to reduce redundancy in tasks and provide a scope of work for the contractor's bid package so that they can get that completed. Now, we talked about the well location. He uses TerrainNavigater Pro also during pipeline surveys in the planning stage. And during the field, he says it has the following cost savings. Using TerrainNavigater Pro for faster contractor-client collaboration on any issues that might arise. This is especially true with the method of change orders. These are normally full field surveys to determine multiple routes before deciding final reroute. TerrainNavigater Pro mobile app can quickly reflect options and exhibits by syncing field information directly to the office that can be easily collaborated with the client for quicker results. Just have some desktop shots that Reggie was so kind to provide here. With Reggie's line of work, maps are referred to as exhibits. And so we have a facility hydrovac planning exhibit. Project proposals to major clients require a client's scope of work and execution plan from the contractor. TerrainNavigater Pro labels have been added to the coordinate features that help a contractor to the work site to review. The many templates that are built into TerrainNavigater Pro allows you to look professional and accurately reflect the project site. Here's an example of a TerrainNavigater Pro desktop shop or map for pipeline planning. So for those of you that might be interested in this type of work, for the project estimate, again, this is for the contractor. He can import the overlays on TerrainNavigator Pro. He can inventory all line crossings by creating markers at those locations and use labels to comment and share with them. Another map provided by Reggie was the property corner search for tribal lands. So what they did was they took each parcel, they converted it to a route. Each route will create markers at each turn, or you can produce points online for various staking reasons. So in the field, you can get an idea of the site overview. Here's another shot that was provided for the proposed oil and gas well location and unit survey. So some fantastic uses for TerrainNavigater Pro, including the label tool, the range rings tool, and so forth, and using custom templates. And what we have here is an example of aerial target surveys with flight pattern that's shown in yellow. And there's he's made use of some of the emergency management symbols or symbology that is included in TerrainNavigator Pro for those pipelines. An excellent example of a professional using some of the richer features of TerrainNavigator Pro. And Reggie's quote on TerrainNavigator Pro: "The best tool I've used to support all my survey projects from start to finish for over 20 years. He recommends TerrainNavigator Pro software for survey and engineering planning, real estate, construction contractors, utility locating companies, also for project managers, geologists, storm chasers, the Boy Scouts, anyone doing scavenge hunting, fire departments, oil and gas, safety personnel, hikers, and mountains. TMP can be used for recreational or professionals. TMP Mobile is a great tool for fast and safe mapping and planning." And once again, I just want to thank Reggie, because he really brought me up to speed on a very specific niche market for TerrainNavigator Pro, and helped us to become aware of how much of a significant cost savings comes with using TerrainNavigator Pro. Now, last up in our vertical markets is the construction market. And one of our resellers is SciTech Louisiana. And our contact there is Silas Dupree. He's been in the construction industry for 14 years, graduated from ITI in Baton Rouge. He's the rental manager for SciTech Louisiana, and some of his duties include managing rental fleet inventory, updating hardware and software, renewing the open rentals, tracking and converting contracts, and software and hardware training. You know, TMP in construction is an excellent vertical market that is beginning to emerge. And so some of the construction customers using TerrainNavigater Pro would be folks like site supervisors, project managers, inspectors, safety managers, and owners. Now, what would you use TerrainNavigater Pro on a construction site? One of the main things is to determine where everything lays out. You'll be able to determine if trees still need to be cleared or if there's no good reference points. It allows the construction crew to do a quick inspection, see something where like a drain, a pipe, or a control point will go, as opposed to just, you know, kind of looking at a set of plans and measurements and kind of not having a really good visual of the layout. Construction managers use TMP to import CSV files, which contain those control points and stakeout points, so that you can see the layout on satellite and aerial photos. They also use TerrainNavigator Pro to view cut fill maps using the TerrainNavigator Pro app. And again, that is with our site's add-on subscription. And they're able to walk the site, see where the high and the low areas are. They can share control points and stakeout points with the crew in the field via the mobile app, share boundary surveys, again, with the site's add-on subscription. So you can share those surveys, geo-reference them with the site's add-on for the crew in the field via the TMP mobile app. And also, it gives the benefit of the crew in the field to be able to use their cell phones. And let's say they come across something unexpected that's out on the job site. They can share the pictures from the field with the site supervisor. And that is at the office via the TMP mobile app. So TerrainNavigator Pro is able to enhance communication. It's also able to get real-time information from the field to the office. So here we have a sample desktop TerrainNavigator Pro with imported CSV points. We also see here the desktop TerrainNavigator Pro with the cut fill map that is overlaid there on the satellite photo. You'll see the desktop on the left-hand side with that cut fill map, and then you'll see on the right-hand side the TerrainNavigator Pro mobile app displaying that cut fill map. Again, of very, it's a great feature for the site crew to be able to have that cut fill map out in the field. Here's an example. This next slide is actually being out in the field using the cell phone to take a picture of the catch basin. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the catch basin, the picture of that geopin at that exact location on the desktop for the supervisor. So some fantastic uses for TerrainNavigator Pro in the construction industry. And I'd say that's one of our emerging markets. So Silas says, we see TMP as a great tool because it helps contractors to visualize what's happening on the job site and really provides a means for clear communication when the issues come up on site. And the way that the data is synced to the cloud and shared between all users in near real time makes this an awesome tool. So fantastic uses for TerrainNavigator Pro in the construction industry. Well, okay. So we've talked about some different vertical markets, the forestry, the survey, oil and gas survey markets, and construction using TerrainNavigator Pro. What's the wrap-up? Well, when we take a look at some of these customer stories, what we're finding is that our customers are very experienced in their industries. They're extremely knowledgeable. They have years and years of experiences both in TMP and in their field. And I think one of the important takeaways from this webinar is that for those who know how and what to use TerrainNavigator Pro, it's kind of like the little engine that could, saving both the TMP customer and their clients thousands of dollars. And so my challenge is to, especially for some of our resellers, I think that's the message. When we look at TerrainNavigater Pro, I was once talking with one of our customers, and he said, yeah, it's like the Ford Super Duty. It's not the Cadillac. It's not the most expensive, subscription or piece of software. But for certain jobs, it's the right tool in the toolbox, and it's at the right price point. Some of those things where we've incorporated a number of different coordinate systems, for example, in TerrainNavigater Pro, or the ability to import or export shape files, things of that nature, exporting maps, syncing to both the mobile app and the handheld GPS units for folks in the field. TMP really is the Ford Super Duty of TerrainNavigater Pro. So I think, when we're looking at this, one of the things that's important is, and you see it cutting across those different vertical markets, the TerrainNavigater Pro mobile and project synchronization, I think, is going to be key as we move towards the future. And it's key for getting time-critical information to the field and from the field back to the desktop in near real time. So just wanted to kind of wrap up and make some observations with this. I'd like to go ahead and open it up to have, if we have any questions. We do have a number of folks that are in this meeting that I leaned on heavily for these slides. So if you want to ask them specific questions, they are here. So let's go ahead and open this up to any questions. If you'd like, we can go ahead. Just taking a look at the time here, it's 12:50. So we do have a few minutes. Let's see if there's any questions that anybody has. Feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask that question. And if the person is still on the line, we can have them, like some of our resellers, Johnny and John, other folks. I know Reggie's on the line. I also know that Bob Mazur is on the line. So go ahead and ask those questions. I do have a question here from Dennis Parent. Have you heard of any use of TMP for stream buffer delineation, especially multiple buffers within buffers? Dennis, I have heard of other situations and use case scenarios where it has been used for stream buffer delineation, especially within the environmental engineering vertical market. I'd be happy, Dennis, to, as a sidebar, address that. I'll get in touch with you after this webinar, and maybe we can leverage some of the information from some of our other customers to help you with that. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other questions coming up on the chat. I'd like to ask a couple of those folks that really helped me with these slides today to just give a couple of minutes. We are short on time, but your thoughts on TerrainNavigater Pro, perhaps on emerging markets, things of that nature. So I would ask Johnny, if you're still on the line, if you could go ahead and unmute and just give us your thoughts on TerrainNavigater Pro.
Thank you, Michelle, and I appreciate you putting all this together for everybody. Certainly, we have seen a lot of our timber buyer and consulting forester clients utilize TerrainNavigator. We're really excited about the upcoming forestry toolbar whenever that's going to be released, and the ability to design inventories there inside of TerrainNavigator, and then be able to push that out to a mobile device, Android, iOS, capture some basic forest inventory tree data in that there, and be able to synchronize that back and export it out for use in any number of programs. You did say that T-Cruise was a Trimble product. That's actually not the case. That's another. It's a different forest inventory program that a lot of people use. But the thought there is that we can capture that data in the field and then be able to export it out to any number of forest inventory applications. So very excited about what's going on now, and certainly with that in forestry, that toolbar is going to open up, I think, a lot more users to some of the mobile side of what TMP can do.
Well, Johnny, thank you so much, and thank you for that correction. I apologize for that mistake, and thank you for that clarification. Greatly appreciated. Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement as we're heading towards 2020. I think that the affordability of where technology is and integrating those is going to be fantastic. John Lunsford, are you still with us?
Yes, Michelle, I'm here.
Hi, John. Is there anything that you'd like to just discuss in terms of TMP and the emerging market and where you see things headed?
Yeah, I'll make a couple comments. First, I would like to just kind of second what you said here on this last slide, that, for me, the field synchronization, the mobile syncing side of TMP is where it's at. I've used a lot of different apps over the course of my career, and being able to find one that integrates all of that, the desktop and mobile, TMP has done a real good job of that. Secondly, I would like to say that TMP complements other software and other workflows. Being able to move files between ArcGIS or Google Earth or some of those things is really important. So I don't just use one piece of software for all of my needs. I have multiple different platforms and software programs that I'm using. So being able to synchronize all that and bring it all in and work with it in multiple workflows is really important to me. And, I feel like that's something that would be very important to other foresters. So.
Excellent. It's so important to get different perspectives. John, really appreciate the work that you're doing. Really excited about the website that you guys have and how you're really staying on top of the emerging technologies. And thank you for pointing out that, TMP's ability to work with other programs is one of TMP's strengths. So we appreciate you and thank you so much. I'd like to ask Robert Mazur, you still on the line, Bob? Not sure that Bob is still on the line. Bob, are you there? Maybe he had to drop off for another commitment, but Bob was just very instrumental in man, just helping me without having a 4-year forestry degree understand a lot of the technical nuances. So I appreciate him. Reggie Ebarb, are you on the line? Perhaps Reggie had to drop off as well for other time commitments. I do see that there are a couple of other questions here. Inca Rhodes, where can we find training for using the features offered in TerrainNavigator Pro? Training can be found on the TerrainNavigator Pro YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and search TerrainNavigator Pro, we have a specific channel that has all the videos. This last year, we implemented these training videos. We do them once a month. Typically, it's the last Wednesday of the month. And that's a great resource. If you need more information, or if you send me an email, Inca Rhodes, I can send that link to you. It can be reached at Michelle_LECUYER@trimble.com. And I have another comment here from Robert Hobbs. As someone who remembers the handheld maps we made after graduating Penn State Forestry School in the 1970s, when topo maps were 1940s vintage from USGS and aerials, and were B and W from USD. Okay, tax maps were another scale entirely. we spent hours getting all that information into one map, handmade. So now having a paper map with topo and aerial and property and parcel information is great. Plus downloading to handheld GPS. These examples show lots of uses for mapping. Bob, thank you for that comment. Technology has come a long way, baby, since 20 years. And, TerrainNavigator Pro was one of the first back in the early 90s to take those wrinkled maps and iron them out and digitize them. And so we're very grateful for those who were early adopters to TerrainNavigator Pro and have stuck with us for the last 20 years. It's because of our customers. I know that Ed Lakire works very diligently to work with our customers in terms of good technical service. That's something that you don't see much these days, but I know that is something that over the last 20 years he has, made that a priority, is his customers. I have another comment here from Krabby's Homestead. Indeed, there are many features we have not used and would like to learn to utilize. That is one of the reasons for this webinar was sometimes we just kind of get stuck in our own little niche, and we don't understand that there are many other uses. So one of the goals for today was to expand people's horizons so that they can understand how others are using it. So I would encourage you, Krabby's Homestead, rurally retreated with Krabby's Homestead, send me an email again, Michelle_LECUYER@trimble.com. And I would be happy to work with you on customizing some training webinars for you. And let's see, there was another thank you page for commenting up on the comments page about our YouTube channel, and that you can call TerrainNavigator Pro for help, which is fantastic. Let's see. Johnny, thank you. Bob, slide your mouse toward the bottom of the screen and you'll be able to unmute yourself. Bob, I see that in the chat that you are with me, but not with a microphone. Again, as Johnny had mentioned, if you take your mouse and slide it over the bottom of the screen that we're in, if the mic is muted, it's red and it's got a slash through it. So Bob, are you with us? I'm not sure. Perhaps this computer doesn't have a mic, or perhaps it's not functioning properly. Okay, he does not have a microphone. Bob, I just want to let you know, thank you so much. You detailed emails and conversations back and forth over the last couple of weeks. And, just thank you so much for your invaluable insight, Bob. Are there any other questions, comments? Are there, perhaps there's some folks here that are on the webinar that would like to ask Johnny a question, or perhaps you'd like to ask John Lunsford a question. You can always, what I'll do is, if it's okay with our resellers, I'll put your contact information when I send out the email link about the YouTube channel once I get this video posted. And if it's okay with you folks, what I'll do is send your contact information, your phone numbers, your websites, and your email addresses and customers. Because what we're trying to do here is expand the TMP community and helping people to leverage different experiences and use case scenarios, and kind of just putting people in touch with each other. Which in the days of these, with technology, everybody's sitting behind the computer, and it's, we seem to be losing that, ability to network and to connect. Well, I think that if we have no further questions, Reggie just sent in a message here that he's not muted, but I cannot hear him. Let's see. Let us, Reggie, is it possible, can you use the phone number to dial in on as opposed to whatever technical problems we might be having with the, let me just check here, Reggie. I'm going to go through the list and see if I know that with the Google Hangouts platform, each individual person that's on the call is the one that handles their mic. And so, Reggie, I'm just looking for you. I do see, Reggie, that you are unmuted. Is it possible, Reggie, that you could pull up the email? Perhaps I have it and maybe call in to this webinar, because Reggie was another one of those folks, man, just instrumental in getting, I mean, oil and gas and pipeline and well location, surveying. I mean, that is something I knew absolutely nothing about, but Reggie was very kind, many emails back and forth and conversations. And I think Reggie would be a great person to give us a few words. I'll give him a couple of minutes. Let's see.
Michelle, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Reggie. Thank you for joining. Reggie, you have just been instrumental in helping me tremendously, and I just wanted to see if you had some words for us.
Oh, well, I appreciate everything, and I just want you to know that I do appreciate all your support you and Ed have given over the years. I started a long time ago. I put 20 years, but it's probably been longer than that. From well location in the oil and gas field, predicting where access roads go on, using the contour maps of the high ground for oriented well pads. By looking at and see where I'm landing at according to the geologist reports. I've noticed a while ago somebody called in and talked about delineations, and I was going to let him know that during our pipeline surveys, and we do cross-country surveys, 600 miles, 200 miles, whatever it takes, whatever the proposals are. And the environmental groups always do delineations of 300-foot wide, swaths down the center line path, and we would get their GIS files from their handheld GPS and plot them on our TerrainNavigator Pro. And now I'll let them go to the field and we'll stake them out before construction starts. So I was going to let him know that is a big part of the oil and gas industry as far as through the pipeline routing. Of course, well location surveys too. So that's one thing I was going to bring up. And I was listening to some of the other callers and stuff that's got as much experience as I have with it. And everything they're doing, I'm doing on this side over here too. Really enjoy it being just a partnership with all the rest of the softwares that we need in this big engineering firm I'm in. It goes hand in hand, and it's just an instrumental tool that I think everybody can use that's in construction or all the fields that I listed, in my notes. So I just want to thank you, Michelle, for putting on this presentation and getting this all together, because it's nice to hear other industries talking about it.
Reggie, thank you so much. And thank you for a lot of clarification that you just provided, that those wetlands and stream delineations are important as well. And, I think this is a thing that with a webinar like this, it's breathing new life. Bring, kind of everybody goes off and this is an opportunity for us all to come together, leveraging experiences and charting the future. And so once again, Reggie, thank you so much. In fact, I just, a big shout out. Some of those folks that provided slides today were not able to attend our webinar, but, they're just as, helpful in helping us at Trimble Forestry and TerrainNavigator Pro to really get the heartbeat. And with the heartbeat, then we can move forward and take full advantage of the software. So thanks again, Reggie. And as Paige, our marketing director, has put up in the comments, if you need a certificate of completion for this afternoon's webinar and you're on the call live, go ahead, email me. I'd be happy to send those out, those training certificates. Bob Hobbs, thank you, Certified Forester number 225. Thank you for your kind words. Again, to all those that have joined us or will be viewing this online, some exciting things are coming in 2020 for the forestry industry. I think we've been able to join together how we think that these are segmented, separate vertical markets. But Reggie, as you mentioned, these actually cut across many different markets are looking for the same types of things. As always, if I can ever be of assistance, please don't hesitate to give me a call or send me an email. I'd be happy to provide insight or help get you in touch with the right folks. And if this has been useful or there's some ideas that you have for future webinars, please email me as well. We'll get that incorporated and get that on the schedule, especially as we're 2019 is winding down and we're heading into 2020. So if we don't have anything else, I will apologize. We ran a little bit over here to 8 minutes past the hour. But I think the time has been fruitful and well served. If anybody, would like to talk to me after the webinar, just give me a call, and we'll make sure that we dot I's and cross T's here. So once again, TMP is a powerful tool, and if you know how to use it and what to use it for, I think it really can help with significant savings. Okay, guys. You would agree with that, Johnny?
Absolutely. Sorry, I had to unmute there.
No problem. If we don't have anything else, I think we can wind down the webinar. Any other final comments? And I'm going to open this up to anybody that's here, still with us here. Any final comments, resting places? Paige, Darden, is there anything that you would like to say? Well, perhaps Paige had other commitments and had to drop off. Once again, thanks for joining this afternoon's webinar, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Make it a great rest of the afternoon. Once again, thank you for your time and have a great day.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Reggie.
Yes, ma'am. You have a good day. Bye.
You too, sir. Bye-bye. Bob, thank you. Robert Mazur, thank you. I hope I presented things in a clear and concise fashion.